It's Monday, the 29th of April. My name is Juan Brown. You're watching the Blancolirio channel, and it's time for a 737 MAX update. Earlier today, Boeing CEO and Chairman Dennis Muilenburg held his shareholder press briefing where he answered six pointed questions from the press, and then promptly left the room. Late last week, the Boeing CEO was joined by Boeing Chief Financial Officer Greg Smith at an earnings conference call and discussed some of the numbers that's impacting Boeing at this time. So today we want to go over some of those numbers. We'll get a little insight as to what drives things at Boeing Aircraft, and also look at some of the answers that Dennis gave at today's shareholder press briefing. If there's one thing I can agree with Dennis on, it's not going to be the bean counters at Boeing that restore the confidence in their product. It's going to be the pilots that fly Boeing aircraft that restore public trust and confidence in their product. So to that end, I picked up the phone and called Boeing Media Relations and followed up with an email requesting a personal simulator ride review in the new Boeing 737 MAX aircraft simulator up at Boeing Aircraft to personally videotape and view the latest MCAS software patch for the 737 MAX. And I want to do this simply as a member of the press that happens to have a 737 type rating, even though I'm not current on the 737. I don't want to go representing any particular company or the company that I work for. At today's shareholder press conference, CEO Muilenburg stopped short of taking direct blame for the 737 MAX initial iteration of the MCAS design. When asked, how are you going to regain public trust, in other words, what happened, Dennis said that the two accidents were a chain of events, which we can all agree on, caused by MCAS activation due to erroneous angle of attack inputs. Because of this chain of events, Dennis said that he will break the chain by redesigning the MCAS system. That's the new fix that we discussed in the previous updates. But he also said that he confirmed the design and certification per our standards. There was no technical slip or gap. When asked about how come the pilots didn't know much about MCAS to begin with, and what about this latest Wall Street Journal report about the AOA disagree light being disabled on Southwest aircraft, Dennis stuck to his guns, saying that MCAS is not an anti-stall system. It's built into the aircraft and designed to perform behind the scenes, not requiring any additional training on behalf of the pilots. Regarding the AOA disagree lights, of course, that is no longer optional equipment. After being grilled by Congress, those options are no longer optional. You just automatically get two angle of attack indicators and an AOA disagree light on every new 737 MAX aircraft produced today. The angle of attack gauge is shown here on the pilot's flying display in the upper right-hand corner. This is a normal indication on the pilot's flying display. If either one of the two angle of attack vanes fails or the output of the angle of attack fails, this is what the PFD will look like. The angle of attack indicator is off scale high. The old indicated airspeed IAS disagree light is on. The standard altitude disagree light is on, and the new angle of attack disagree light is on. Time to hand fly the aircraft, set a known pitch and power setting, and sort out whose set of instruments is correct and whose are incorrect. When pressed about the original design iteration of MCAS only having one single AOA input without any redundancy, Dennis again reiterated, well, at this point he kind of threw the pilots of the accident aircraft under the bus. He claimed that it's the runaway stabilizer trim procedure that needs to be followed, and that the pilots in these two accidents did not follow exactly correctly. When further pressed to admit that the initial MCAS design was a flawed design, CEO Muilenburg said that we followed the steps regarding the design process and the certification process, and that we're making continuous improvements to the product. Now let's go over some of those numbers from the earnings call, and that'll give us a little better picture of what goes on behind the scenes at Boeing in developing these new aircraft. The new 737 MAX with the new MCAS software package now has 135 flights and 230 hours total time on the aircraft, and they hope to get this aircraft off to the FAA soon for recertification, hopefully to get this whole thing done by about the June time frame. But airlines around the U.S. are looking at more like August before they get the 737 MAX back online. So what's been the cost to Boeing so far for all of this? According to Greg Smith, Chief Financial Officer, they're looking at about $1 billion, but with a B, $1 billion in cost so far for the 737 MAX production line, lack of production. This cost is simply the difference between the production rate that was previously scheduled of 52 aircraft per month to the current production rate of only 42 aircraft per month. It's this production rate, or block numbers as they call it, that drives the profit at Boeing Aircraft. The difference between 52 aircraft per month being produced versus 42 has cost Boeing for the first quarter of 2019 $1 billion. That means they've had to bring extra resources, manpower, onto the 737 program to fix MCAS, at the same time have less number of aircraft go out the door. This does not this $1 billion in cost does not cover any contractual remedies or any of the other many liabilities that this whole fiasco is going to cause. Some aviation industry experts guesstimate that this whole 737 MAX MCAS thing could cost upwards to $4 to $5 billion. Will Boeing be able to absorb that? Will they be able to handle it? They had $2.8 billion in cash flow the first quarter of 2019, and total they have $7.7 billion in cash on hand. So yes, it looks like Boeing can handle a substantial hit from this 737 program. They've also stopped the share buyback program in an effort to preserve cash. So the total revenue for Boeing for the first quarter of 2019 was $22.9 billion. The aircraft backlog at Boeing, the number of aircraft they need to build, they have orders for, is a total of 5,600 aircraft. The largest part of that backlog, of course, is the 737. That's their largest market, 4,400 aircraft. 4,400 737 MAX aircraft still on order at Boeing. Now, how are these delays affecting other production lines at Boeing? You know, the Boeing 777X was quietly rolled out here a few weeks ago and is going to begin test flights here soon. The folks at Boeing claim the 777 program is still on schedule for a 2020 delivery date. Because of all the issues with the 737 MAX program, the new Boeing 777 was quietly rolled out and shown to just a handful of employees at the Boeing factory before going back to work on it. The new 777 features energy-efficient new engines from General Electric and a high aspect ratio redesigned wing, long and slender, requiring folding wingtips to fit in the gates at our existing airports. What may be getting impacted is the NMA, or Next Generation Mid-Size Aircraft. This is going to be the airplane that replaces the 7576 series of aircraft, the 200 or so seat category of airplane. Some of the folks on that program have been pulled off that program and put into the 737 program for now to get the fix in. That could potentially delay that program, which has been scheduled to roll out somewhere around 2025. Here's an artist's rendition of what that new aircraft will look like. The Boeing 787 program is still rolling along, and they've actually upped production from 12 aircraft per month to 14 787 aircraft per month. So if it's aircraft production rates that drive profits at Boeing Aircraft, what prevents bean counters from doing really dumb things or creating such shortcuts to hamper safety, that is the FARs, the Federal Aviation Regulations. This is why the relationship between the manufacturer and the regulator is so critically important, and what investigators are going to be looking at very carefully as they investigate this entire thing. Now, regarding those FARs, I want to put to bed a myth that's constantly comes up here in social media and is promulgated, I think, by the mainstream media. A lot of folks out there think that the new 737 MAX series of aircraft is an inherently unstable aircraft. And that is just patently not true. It cannot be certified if it was an unstable aircraft. It's FAR Part 25 that governs the production of transport category aircraft and requires that that aircraft be inherently stable. The MCAS system is not a system to make the 737 stable. The MCAS system is not an anti-stall program. The MCAS is simply an FAA requirement for the 737 to satisfy the requirements to meet a single type certificate rating for that aircraft. In other words, the 737 MAX needs to fly and handle similarly enough to earlier versions of the 737 to only require one single type rating with no additional training. That's what MCAS is for. The 737 MAX, along with all the other previous iterations of the 737, are inherently stable aircraft, as spelled out in FAR Part 25. And if you want to stay up at night, you can read FAR Part 25.175 and read all about the stability requirements for an aircraft. There is one caveat: you must operate the aircraft within the operating envelope, or all bets are off. I'll post a link to these FARs for all you insomniacs. And everything in aviation is regulated by FARs, Federal Aviation Regulations, FAA. The operation of these light aircraft are generally under Part 91 of the FARs. The operation of charter aircraft are found under Part 135. The operation of airliner type aircraft is found under Part 121. And the production and building of transport category aircraft is under FAR Part 25. Some of you may continue to still argue that, well, they got MCAS certified and passed the FAA. How do you know they didn't get past a inherently unstable design? Again, because MCAS has nothing to do with the stability of the aircraft, merely the handling of the aircraft to feel like previous iterations of the 737. So I'll post a link to the shareholders conference call with the Boeing CEO Dennis Muhlenberg in the link section below. Stay tuned for further updates on the 737 MAX here on the Blancolirio channel. See you here.
Communications, can I help you?
Hey, this is Juan Brown. I'm a pilot with...
Let me have you. You know what? I'm going to refer you over to one of our VPs in the media relations area. I just need some information from you first, though.
Okay.
1 second, please.